Hey, it's John Terry, the Black Belt Leader. Welcome to this Black Belt Leadership Master Your Life moment. Let me ask you a question. Who wants to go through life going backwards? Now, I'm not talking about the movie Tenet, where you've got this interesting device that allows people to move back and forth through time. I'm talking about living real life going in reverse. Now, everybody says no when asked that question, but far too many people, when you look at their actions say otherwise. As a result, they're missing out on what's in front of them because they only see what's behind them. Here's a truth you need to know. When you can't let go of the past, you're destined to live there. It's like putting your hand on a hot stove, getting burned, and then continually going back again and again just to relieve the experience. Or it's like getting severely cut, getting stitches, only to go home and remove those stitches so you can go back to the emergency room and get sewn up once more. Now, why would anyone want to do that? But sadly, as you look at the actions of people, they do this every single day. Now, this is a topic I've taught on before, but it's one that bears repeating. And let me share with you a story that I had an experience in having a conversation with a friend just this week. I was speaking with a friend on the phone, and he had taken my advice recently and had a candid man in the mirror moment with himself. He took the time to conduct an honest examination in an attempt to isolate the root causes of why he wasn't moving forward and why he wasn't experiencing more success in life. He shared with me what he saw disturbed him as he realized he was living life in the rearview mirror. Here's what he shared with me. He said, "John, I didn't like what I saw when I looked in the mirror. When I took an honest, candid, raw look at myself, I saw a man who refused to let go of the things that had disappointed him in the past, people who had let me down. And as a result of that, I had become bitter and I had become angry." Now, my friend knew something had to change in his life, or he was going to be stuck in the past for the rest of his life. He was essentially Bill Murray in the classic movie Groundhog Day, experiencing the same hurts, frustrations, and disappointment, and living the same life over and over every single day. Now, in my friend's situation, it wasn't like in Bill in the movie where he was physically living the same day over and over, but he was continually replaying the same day over and over in his mind. And to his subconscious mind, which can't tell the difference, he was continually reinforcing himself as a victim, someone who had been taken advantage of by others, or someone who had given trust to other people only to be disappointed or let down when they didn't follow through. He was living life in the rearview mirror. You know, leadership expert Tony Robbins says, where your focus goes, energy flows. Now, my friend, what was he doing? He was focusing on the negative. He was reliving the hurts and frustrations of the past over and over again. And as a result of that, he was increasing the negativity in his life. This was clouding his view of the world around him, and it was taking a horrendous toll on his business, his family, and his own health and welfare. And as he and I talked, my thoughts went to an affirmation statement I remembered reading many, many years ago in a book written by Dr. Gerald Jampolsky called Love is Letting Go of Fear. Dr. Jampolsky, if you don't know the name, he's the founder of the Center for Attitudinal Health. He's a Stanford medical doctor, and he is the author of the book, Love is Letting Go of Fear. Here's the affirmation statement he made that I shared with my friend in this call. I can escape the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. You see, my friend living life in the rearview mirror admitted he was living with attack thoughts. He was replaying in his mind all the times he had been let down, disappointed, or taken advantage of by others in business. And his thoughts were continually turning to retaliation, to revenge, and to retribution as he continually fed the anger and hostility being built up and magnified within his own mind. Now, as a result, here's what was taking place in his body. His cortisol levels rose, as did his blood pressure. He found himself eating more and more junk food as a temporary escape from the frustration and anger that was building inside of him. He became snippy with his wife and his children, as well as those closest to him. The continued stress of living life in the rearview mirror increased his waistline. He got fatter, and at the same time, it lowered his immune system. He got sicker, and he found himself getting sick more and more frequently. I shared an excerpt from Dr. Jampolsky's book, with my friend. And I want to share that quote with you. Here's what Dr. Jampolsky says in the book, Love is Letting Go of Fear. We change the world we see by changing our thoughts around it. By changing our thoughts, we're actually changing the cause. Then the world we see, the effect, will change automatically. What was he saying? Essentially, he's saying it's relinquishing a belief system that isn't serving you well and really is in fact harming you and those around you, and ultimately replacing it with a different belief system, a different way of thinking that serves you and those around you much better. By changing your thoughts, you change both the cause and effect of what's going on in your life. Now, no Elsa music, please, but it's about letting go. What we don't realize when we're living life in the rearview mirror is that we're often stuck in a vicious cycle of mentally retaliating against those who did us wrong or we believe did us wrong, and we're looking to avenge a circumstance in our lives, but what we're really doing is harming ourselves. The past is over and we can't change it, but when we live life in the past, we live life in the rearview mirror, what are we doing? We're giving that person, that situation, that circumstance, control and power over our lives. And when we relinquish control of ourselves, that's a mouthful. When we relinquish control of ourselves, we relinquish control of our opportunity to move forward. Now, as a 3-time martial arts Hall of Famer, I like to say that this is not how black belt leaders win. They don't win a fight looking behind rather than looking in front at the opponent they're facing. When you go through life, living life in the rearview mirror, this is not how you experience more real life success. This is a self-sabotaging behavior that does one thing and one thing only. It sets you up for more failure in life. Now, why is that so? It's allowing the past to predict the future. And as a result, we don't see the moment for what it truly is. Because we're clouding the present with what happened in the past, and we're using that to predict what is going to happen in the future, we begin to see agendas that aren't really there. We begin to take things personally that we shouldn't. We begin to see people manipulating when they're not. And we end up saying and doing things that essentially shoot ourselves in the foot with our own gun. Maybe you remember the Andy Griffith episode where Barney Fife actually did that. Nobody wants to shoot themselves in the foot with their own gun, but they do it every single day when they're living life in the rearview mirror. So how do we stop living life that way? Let me give you some tips. First, you've got to be honest with yourself. You've got to recognize this is what you're doing and admit to yourself that it's holding you back from real life success in your life. It's prohibiting you from discovering, developing, deploying your black belt leader within. And it's not just harming you, it's harming those around you and likely those closest to you most. That means you've got to have that raw, candid conversation with yourself, and you've got to admit that ultimately you are the problem. Now, secondly, you've got to let go. You've got to forgive those who you believe have wronged you in the past, whether they actually did or not. Forgiveness is the key to letting go. You've got to be willing to let go of those hurtful experiences and stop returning to the hot stove only to get burned one more time. The past is over. You can't change it. Let it go. Thirdly, you've got to retrain your brain to think in a new and different and better way. Now, this requires you to become consciously aware of your thoughts. And I've taught on this many, many times. You've got to be cognizant and aware of what you're thinking and why. When you find yourself wanting to go to the rearview mirror, you've got to take an intentional pause. You've got to take a deep breath and hold your thoughts for the moment so you can take control of them. And then you've got to choose to think in a new and different way. And rather than responding with anger, with fear, with frustration, rather than going critical or negative, take a moment and pause. Take a deep breath or two or three and look for something positive in the moment. You know, in real life management, one of the companies I lead, we teach a retrain the brain process we refer to as alter. It's a 5-step process to where you, number one, acknowledge the attitude that's at the heart of your problem. And then number two, you want to learn what's causing the trigger that takes you to where you don't want to go. You can then create a step 3 tactical plan, a process by which you can replace one belief system with another. And then number 4, you execute that plan. Finally, number 5, you review how you're doing, tweaking and adjusting until you replace the thoughts that aren't serving you well with those that do. And those new thoughts become the thoughts you think every day. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but this is how you stop living life in the rearview mirror. To me, it's a self-leadership issue. When we're failing to lead ourselves well and we're not taking control of what we're thinking, we're allowing negative emotions to hijack our thoughts. And as a result of that, we're acting on poor thinking, which is always a recipe for disaster. And don't forget that objects in the rearview mirror often appear closer than they really are. A rear view mirror view of the world continually amplifies the hurts, the pains, the frustrations, and the other negative emotions you felt in the moment and re-experience every time you go back there. And with that come the disastrous long-term results that negatively impact your health, your wealth, and your relationships. Now, living life in the rearview mirror and seeing those things amplified also amplifies the missed opportunities you didn't take advantage of when they were before you. Now, why didn't you take advantage of those opportunities? Because you only saw them after you passed them by, because you were living life looking behind you. You're living a life of regret. You're living a life of disappointment, and you're living a life of what I refer to as true sadness, because you're only seeing what could have been if you had been looking in the right direction. It's like you're going through the experience that Scrooge went through in A Christmas Carol when one night he had to relive all of the past mistakes that he made. You're doing that every single day when you're living life in the rearview mirror. Now, my friend, knowing I've got a martial arts background, he said, John, I realized this after we finished our conversation. He said, living life in the rearview mirror is like getting into the boxing ring and simply staring back at your corner rather than keeping your eyes on the opponent you're getting ready to fight. It's not going to end up very well for you, and it's going to hurt for some time when you eventually wake up from getting knocked out. He said, and then the sad part is, if you're living life in the rearview mirror, you get back in the same ring and you do the same thing over and over again. And he said, at some point, you're going to get tired of getting your lights punched out and you're going to turn around and pay attention. He said, for me, that time is now. Now, we had a big laugh over that, but the point was made that until he admitted he was the problem and turned his head to get a different view of the world around him, nothing was going to change. You know, my grandfather was a coal miner. He was an old school guy that told me early on in life that one of his best school teachers was life. As a young boy, he told me often that life has lessons it wants to teach us every single day. And if we learn the lesson the first time life wants to teach it to us, that lesson never has to be repeated. This is how we learn and grow. But then he added with a big smile that only my grandfather could do. He smiled and he said, but John, there's far too many people living in the world today who are stuck in kindergarten or the first grade because they keep going to the same class every day because they refuse to learn the lessons life is trying to teach them. They're stuck and they're not moving forward. You know, as I think back to what my grandfather told me, and I think to people that are living life in the rearview mirror, I think many of them are still stuck in preschool. They haven't even made it to kindergarten yet, but the point was well made. What was my grandfather saying? He was essentially saying far too many people are doing exactly what we've been talking about for the last several minutes. They're living life in the rearview mirror. They're stuck, essentially sitting still and not moving forward. But the worst offenders are going backwards. They're really driving the wrong way on a one-way street. And I can promise you at some point that's not going to end well for them. Now, Dr. Jampolsky said it well when he said, I can escape the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. What needs to alter in your life so you can experience more real life success? What thoughts do you need to give up right now, today, so you can go up, grow up, and become the person you were put on this earth to become? Let me challenge you. Let it go. Who do you need to forgive right now, this moment today, so you can stop harboring past hurts and anger and resentment and release the constant flow of negativity in your life? Let me encourage you, let those individuals go. Now, remember this and pay close attention to this next statement. The quality of the life you're living will never be better than the quality of the thinking that dictates the quality of life you're experiencing right now. Let me say that again. The quality of life you're living will never be better than the quality of thinking that dictates the quality of life you're experiencing right now. To improve the quality of your living, you've got to improve the quality of your thinking. And if you want to be a black belt master of your life, and I believe that's the case, or you wouldn't be here tuning in each and every week to this podcast, and you want to experience more real life success in your life, you've got to become a black belt master of your thoughts. Now, this demands one thing, and you guessed it. You've got to stop living life looking in the rearview mirror. Remember this, the past is over and it can't be changed. So why torture yourself with what was or what could have been and miss what's before you right now at this moment? Turn around and see the endless opportunities that are before you right now. Because if you only see them in the rearview mirror, it's too late. Life has passed you by. Let it go, turn around, and pay attention to what's before you. See and seize the opportunities ahead. That's how you experience more real life success. And that's how you accomplish doing what it is you've been put on this earth to do as a black belt leader in life. I'm John Terry, the Black Belt Leader, and I want to say thanks for joining me for this Black Belt Leadership Moment. Have a great day.